Welcome along to obviously Fight Talk episode 21. We are 21. It's a celebration. We've got the key to the door, and it's if the UFC knew. They gave us a great 21st birthday present with UFC 199 last night. A stunning card. I'm joined as always by my two colleagues and partners in crime. We got Mr. Rob Palin.
Thanks for having me, man.
And we've got Mr. Carl Crazy Durham.
What's the crack, lads?
We've no Daniel Mulvahedy again this week. He's missing in action. He's actually he's on duty tonight. He's inside the cage, but we certainly have a packed show. But it's proudly brought to you as well by MMAMix.com for all your mixed martial arts, Irish, international, UFC, Bellator, Bama, whatever you want. It's all under a one roof at MMAMix.com. So we're delighted they share in there all our content and all our shows as well. But tonight I don't think, gentlemen, we can go any further without acknowledging and tipping our hat to one of the greatest of all time. He floated like a butterfly, he stung like a bee. Unfortunately, we had the passing of the great Muhammad Ali. So lads, just a quick, I know he didn't really give you a heads up in this, just a memory or something that from you of Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, obviously I'm too young for to have seen any of his fights really live, but obviously it's mad to think how many people he actually influenced. Last night Kevin Casey is actually married to one of his daughters as well, so that was kind of a mad moment where he went through a camp and right at the end of the camp his father-in-law dies, and he obviously, I'm sure he was influenced tons by him. I seen a quote, I can't remember the exact quote and I can't remember who it was from, but it's something that stuck with me. It was that Muhammad Ali was a global superstar before globalization ever existed. It was back in like 60s and 50s when he was huge, and 70s obviously. So it's sad news, but considering the disease that he had, and the stuff that he done while he had that, all the charity work that he done, all that kind of stuff, obviously a great life and probably the best ever.
Yeah, Carl.
For me, I've never obviously seen Muhammad Ali fight. I'd be way too young for that. But I remember going to school, and my history teacher, Mr. O'Connell, had a picture of Muhammad Ali on his wall. It was before I really knew who he was. And it's, the picture with Ali standing over, it's in black and white, he's standing over his fighter, and that picture, and I asked, my teacher, oh, what's the crack with that picture? Why'd you have a picture of a boxer? I didn't quite know who it was. And he was like, that's Muhammad Ali. He was like, if you talk about who he was as a fighter, that's one thing, but in terms of a historical character and what he done for the human rights movement in America, he went on and explained all that to me, and I had to look into him for myself. You see, it's been around the internet a lot now what he said about why should I go 10,000 miles to Vietnam to kill brown people when brown people here in Louisville are treated like dogs. With stuff like that you have to respect Muhammad Ali for. Without him, you probably wouldn't have had the human rights movement being as, what would you say, reported on as much as it was. Like Martin Luther King was afraid to come out and criticise the Vietnam War before Muhammad Ali. So Muhammad Ali obviously inspired Martin Luther King. So it goes to show how big of a character he actually was, and how much of an impact he's had on pretty much everyday life for a lot of black people in the States.
Yeah, me growing up, that was almost like you were having a little dig at me there by saying I'm too young.
Not at all.
I'm not that fucking old, but yeah, I grew up with my dad watching the boxing. He used to show me a lot of Muhammad Ali, and he was a wizard inside the ring, but he was an absolute character and a gentleman and a comedian outside of it. And it's not just for the combat world; it's a loss for mankind. He was a great man, and someone who inspired and still inspires, be it fighters or thinkers and talkers of the world, So that's just our little tip to add to Muhammad. Tonight we do have a packed show, so your rundown this evening, we're going to be talking some of the big news. Last night, UFC 199, obviously it was a fantastic card, but boy did they break some news. We got Brock Lesnar signs a deal to fight at UFC 200. Dick Chest is back in the game. Brock Lesnar is coming back. I know a lot of people are very happy about that. Then we got confirmation that we're all waiting for, that BT skipped and missed on their live broadcast. Conor McGregor confirmed to fight Nate Diaz in the rematch for UFC 202. That goes down in August, boys. Then we're going to talk a little bit about himself, the man's growth back to manhood. We're going to talk about Eddie Munster's growth there. So we'll have Carl zooming in. Then we're going to basically go in deep on UFC 199. What a card. Like I said at the top of the show, it was like the UFC knew we turned 21 today, and they gave us that gift. An absolute barn burner of a card from the very first fight of the night. Unbelievable. And then there was crazy news as well that broke as well with probably the most famous, I think it's fair to say, MMA journalist in the world.
Yeah.
Ariel Helwani was removed from UFC 199 last night. We won't go into too much detail, but we'll talk about that later on in the show as well. So, gentlemen, I'm not too sure where you want to start with that. I think I know where Carl wants to start. He definitely said he had an erection when he heard this. I seen that quote about it. So, what do you think of Brock Lesnar?
Yeah, you know, you said dick chest. I shot a load all over my chest after hearing that news. Yeah, like, you know.
Yeah.
That's a record time there. A record time.
It's nearly midnight. I'm allowed. Fucking. What was I saying? Yeah, Lesnar coming back. Like it's for one fight, but that's huge, you know. To have him come back into the sport, especially for UFC 200. Like, didn't he fight? His first fight was UFC 100.
No.
Am I right?
No, that was the rematch with
That was the
Mir.
rematch with Frank Mir.
It was
Was
like
it,
UFC 89, I think it was his first one.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. But yeah, like to have him come back for UFC 200, like he was when he came in, the biggest draw that there ever was at that time, other than probably I don't know if that was before GSP's card in Canada, but yeah, like it was Lesnar coming into mixed martial arts. I watched it before him, but he really drew me into the sport because I was like, wait, there's actually, you know, proper superstars who are coming over to the sport. Yeah, like to see him come in, like he's a silverback, you know. You heard about that kid falling into the gorilla pen. If you've seen Lesnar in that fight against Heath Herring, you know, Heath Herring was that little black baby. That was a brilliant fight. Yeah, I'm happy that he's back.
How did you get that reference?
Yeah.
The weird thing about the fight being confirmed, no fight's confirmed. So basically, what they done last night was it was like a little hype video, and it was shown DC and John Jones getting ready, and it was showing like all the build up and all, and just right at the end you just heard, "Can you hear me now?" or something on this line, and then it shows Brock and he does the big overhand. But what I loved about it was it cut to Joe Rogan, and he was like, "What's
going on?
Was that real? Is that real?" Like, and so the news originally was rumored and broke by MMAfighting.com. Little segue into something later on there, boys. But yeah, so he's not matched. There's no matchup. So Rob, what was first of all, when you seen it, Rob? What was your reaction? Then we'll talk about there's no matchup.
Well, me and Carl were watching the fights together, and I went, holy fucking shit, to be honest. That's what I said. Now, it was, as you said, it was reported, so we were waiting on it, but I didn't think that it would have been announced on the night. And the way that they did promote it, don't tell me that UFC doesn't promote themselves like a pro wrestling fucking company, because they do. And that's exactly what they were doing, and obviously they have a pro wrestler there, so why not do it? But, yeah, like, my initial reaction was, holy shit, I can't believe that they even announced it on that night. I'm not sure if the hand was played with Ariel's reporting, and they wanted to hold it off until a couple of days or something, and then they just, you know, got that video package up and running and played it during the event. But yeah, it's amazing news. Like, even if you're not that interested in a Brock Lesnar fight, for people like us who, you know, we want people to watch the sport, not just because, you know, we're fans, but because we do this and we want more people to be interested in listening to people talking about the sport. And what better way than having somebody like Brock Lesnar, who is a known superstar. He's a known draw. Probably him, McGregor, and Rousey are probably the three biggest draws in MMA now, even though Brock has been away and obviously Rousey's been away as well.
4 years, Brock's away.
Exactly, it's been a long time. One of the interesting things, I suppose, about it is that my first thought was, how is this even happening? Like, why is WWE letting him go? I'm pretty sure he has a contract. WWE is actually allowing him to do this. They basically said it's a one-time deal. So I have the statement here. I'll just read it out. Brock Lesnar remains under contract to WWE. However, he's been granted a once-off opportunity to compete at UFC 200. Following this milestone event at July 9th, Brock will return to WWE for SummerSlam. And blah, 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 blah. So it looks like it's a one-time deal. It makes sense for both companies because, the UFC wanted to fill that big McGregor hole in UFC 200. What better way than have Brock Lesnar come back to fill that hole? The WWE is going to get all this exposure. And I think I read there was rumblings of Brock Lesnar maybe wanting to get out of his contract because he wanted to compete again. And maybe that's something that the WWE said. They said, we'll let you go. We'll let you have one fight, stay on a contract with us, and we'll obviously continue to pay you and you do a few events for us as well. So it makes sense. I just wonder if they're going to do some weird cross-promotional stuff between MMA and wrestling. That's something that you'd probably hate. No.
Yeah, like Brock Lesnar, don't get me wrong, when he was in the UFC, he was an absolute train. There's no denying, it's very different to
Punk.
CM Punk coming in, and you know what I mean. Brock has a fantastic wrestling pedigree behind him. There's no doubt when he was in the heavyweight division, he was the ruler for a while, and the heavyweight division had to adjust to get used to Brock Lesnar.
He brought basically a new style, like a new physique to the heavyweight division in a way, new athleticism.
And then basically, if you look at, you had Kane, you had Junior, you had Alistair Overeem, you had all these guys that were coming up that sort of pushed Brock down. As in when he got beat by Kane, he was beaten well. When he was beaten by Alistair, he was beaten well. But now the heavyweight division has all of a sudden gone very thin again. And bring Brock back, you know what I mean? It's going to be huge hype train. But the thing is, I was looking at it, right? You've Kane fighting Travis Brown at 200. Who's he going to fight? And in my head, I'm thinking, I wonder, is Verdum ready to go?
Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis.
Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
Create a new star in Derek Lewis. Let him beat Brock Lesnar.
Yeah, you'd assume, he's still on a contract with WWE. Okay, wrestling isn't real, but I'm sure they're going to be pushing for Lesnar to be matched with somebody who's manageable because they don't want their big star to look weak. You know what I mean? You do have to look at it that way as well. So maybe in the whole contract negotiations, there's going to be a thing where they can really sell Brock Lesnar coming back against somebody who's not top 10 because he's been out for 4 years. He hasn't fought in 4 years. Even when he was fighting. How many fights has he had? I don't know off the top of my head.
5
6,
and
7?
3. He's
5 and 3, so 8 fights. So, he's not, this really, really, really experienced guy coming back, and you need to throw him into the top 10 straight away. Give him somebody, manageable who can fight, because he's the selling point of this fight anyway. You don't have to put him in there with Verdum to sell the fight. So give him someone who's manageable, someone that, like Carl said, who if does win, they get a huge push, they get a huge rub from the win over Brock Lesnar. Why not do that? It's going to be interesting anyway to see.
I think go on, Carl, go ahead.
I think maybe Derek Lewis is a bad fight for Lesnar simply because we know Lesnar doesn't like getting hit. I think if you are going to pair Lesnar up with somebody, it's going to have to be somebody that won't come out and try take his head off like Derek Lewis. It's just we know he doesn't like getting hit. Anytime he gets hit, he wilts. It's simple as. So you'd be looking at somebody, if you're smart, somebody lower down in the UFC heavyweight division, and someone that isn't a excellent stand-up fighter, or someone that isn't a brawler.
I'm sorry, Noel, did you mention Frank Mir?
No, I didn't say Frank Mir.
Yeah.
What, you think rubber match potentially?
Maybe.
Shane Carwin came out on Twitter and was like, "Yeah, I'll take that fight. I'll whoop Brock's ass."
Yeah.
What you were saying there about giving him a manageable fight, I don't think that shit will fly because you're talking about a former heavyweight champion. They can't put him in there with a tin can.
Yeah, but I'm not mean a tin can. I mean somebody who's manageable. I just mean not a top 5, not top 10 fighter. Like there's still some guys in there, like Derek Lewis. I think I'd pick Derek Lewis over Brock Lesnar at this point probably,
So would I.
to land a big shot early. But he's not. I don't think he's top 10. If he is top 10, he's probably 8 or 9, at most. So what I mean is somebody who is good but isn't an absolute killer in there, or even somebody who has potential. Like why not? Or do the Frank Mir match. The Frank Mir match, I think, makes all the sense in the world. They both have a win over each other. Frank hasn't looked great, but I'm sure he'll have huge motivation coming back in there against Lesnar. It's a fight that he wanted.
Come here, Rob. I just gonna cut you short. You're forgetting Frank Mir's B sample just tested positive too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That was my argument to win though.
Yeah, and just now, I said, I was thinking, will I let him rant? Will I let him go on and sell this fight and then go?
Let me finish my point. Just let him off.
Now he's on drugs. But that would be interesting. I wonder it when Brock pisses into his pot, will it fucking burn the tiles underneath the fucking paper cup or? But no, look, listen, I think it's going to be huge for MMA. It's huge for, like, the weird thing about it is they're saying, it's to replace Conor. You were saying that. I can't believe you actually said to replace Conor's hole 2 times and Carl didn't dive all over that. But
I was going to, but I'm very aware of the chatting that if we speak over each other, it gets very confused. But yeah, if you want somebody to fill a hole, Brock Lesnar is the one to fill that hole. He's a large man. And he's good at filling holes, so I'd let him fill.
But I think it's gonna be big in the sense that the WWE are gonna win from it. They're gonna get the pass over and stuff like that. But I just think that, like, I liked watching Brock. So this whole thing of I wouldn't like it because it's very WWE.
You're not even that. My point is that if they start doing cross promotional things, as in like if Brock starts going out there in WWE and playing his character, as a wrestler, but then that coming into the MMA world, I know you were very skeptical of that, or skeptical is probably not the right word, but
is Paul Heyman gonna walk him in? I really hope he is. My client.
Paul Heyman's the man.
Yeah, Paul Heyman.
You are losing me here. I'm showing my age. I don't know who Paul fucking Heyman is.
Paul Heyman's a monster. You'd love him.
But yeah, like I just think it's a big move by the UFC. I think it's a great move by the UFC. It's going to give, like, Stipe. He's not going to get Stipe. Let's be honest. No. You know what I mean? That's not going to happen. So if you look down, that's what I'm trying to think in my head. I'm matchmaking in my head. Is it Fedor Emelianenko?
Yeah, that's the big one. Obviously, Fedor. Finally, the UFC have Fedor some kind of way in their organization, in a way. With Fedor fighting on Fight Pass. So that's the first thing that everyone's kind of jumped on. Is it going to be Fedor? I don't know. It'd be great to see as well, but I'm not going to say that Fedor's going to fight in the UFC until I see him with a pen in his hand and signing the contract to do it. So
yeah. I wonder as well, like, how far back are these negotiations going? Because obviously everything fell through with Conor. I'm wondering if it was always the plan to get Brock onto UFC 200.
Maybe.
Well, they're not. He hasn't just signed it in the last week, because
this is what
UFC 200's like 4 weeks away, 5 weeks away.
Exactly. Yes, that's the first thing that me and Carl said. It was like, how long have they known this? Because I'm sure Brock and whoever's opponent is. Would want a longer training camp than 4 or 5 weeks. Want a couple of weeks, especially for Brock, who he's been off for a long time. He's going to need to really get himself back into that fight shape. It's a different shape than sure it's a different shape than being in wrestling shape. So
pretending to do stuff to people.
Yeah.
I actually heard the best worst conspiracy theory is McGregor was removed from UFC 200 because UFC New Ireland were in the Euros. And all the bandwagon fans will be going to France. There you go. There you go.
You know what? That's not a conspiracy. That's like totally true. I can prove that. I have these leaked files from Dana White's personal bank accounts. He was in cahoots with Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should.
We're going right down the rabbit hole now.
So, we're climbing back out of that fucking rabbit hole. Let's talk about something that when I was sitting at home last night watching the fights, and next minute I was on Twitter and I was like, McGregor, Diaz, 202? What? I was watching BT Sports, and BT Sports made an absolute bollocks of it, and they didn't show the announcement for McGregor Diaz. So I'm sat on my couch and everyone, and they're all talking about it on the telly then when I came back from the ad, and I'm going, what? Did I fall asleep? I was like, what happened to me here? But yeah, so Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz confirmed, signed the contract, done and dusted, UFC 202. What do we think? And it was confirmed at 170 as well.
I'm actually, you're gonna hate me. I'm tired of talking about this fight now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually sick of it. Whatever. It didn't happen at UFC 200. I would have liked to see it, but at this point, I'm going. Look, it's a nothing fight. It doesn't mean anything. Conor, if he beats Diaz, he gets his win. That's about it. It doesn't further any division. There's no title fights. It's holding up the featherweight division. For me, I'm gonna watch the fight. I'm excited for it, but I'm sick of talking about it. It doesn't make very exciting for a podcast, but yeah.
They're gay garbage saucy in it, Carl. They're gay garbage saucy in it.
Yeah, like I'm glad it's happening because I hope Conor does get his win, but at the same time I'm going, look, here's hoping that it gets to the actual fight this time. When it gets closer to it, obviously I'll be more excited about it. But yeah, we'll see what happens anyway.
Yeah, like I get where you're coming from with the whole, the fight doesn't make sense, which it doesn't really, in a way. But I think now that everything has happened with the UFC, with Nate, with Conor, I think the fight has kind of made itself make sense in a way. Like it's something that people want to see kind of come to fruition because of all the obstacles that got in its way, and they want to see maybe how Conor looks at 170 again after taking some time off, and then obviously they want to see if Nate can do it again, and then I think the big thing is to see what happens between the UFC and Conor, and if anything else gets revealed on the way. But yeah, we spoke a lot about it, so there's not too much that we can really delve into, except for saying, oh, it's on now. Well, we assume it's on now. I did see something on Twitter though. I don't know if Carl, you can remember, we were talking about it last night. Did Nate Diaz get into a fight or something backstage, or at least a scuffle or something, or an argument?
That was the rumor. Apparently, Nate Diaz's team got into a scrap with the scrap pack of Team Alpha Male. Apparently,
yeah, I've seen.
This is according to Nicholas Dalby.
Nicholas Dalby, UFC fighter. He put up a picture with Nate Diaz's team and either Team Alpha Male or Guida's team. I know they're the same team, but I'm not sure what way he phrased it. Got into a scuffle or a fight. So I haven't really seen any other news on that. So hopefully nothing too big happened. And another.
Can't believe it's suspended.
Yeah, that's again conspiracy theory, as you said. No, they get suspended. But that's what people were saying. The deluded fan was saying, "Oh, Nate Diaz done right to get into a fight backstage because he wants to get himself fucking suspended so he doesn't have to fight Conor again."
Yeah.
You're going, fuck off.
Yeah.
Now I like when I seen it, I was like sort of like what you were saying, Carl. I was like, yeah, it's on, and it's almost good to have a date now so that there's not isn't it happening? Is it happening? Is it not happening? That was driving me nuts. I won't go too much into detail. You sort of touched on it, Carl, because we're going to cover 199 now. But there was a certain man who, in the post conference after, I felt sorry for when they asked him what's next for you, because he just came off a great victory and he couldn't answer that question because of this. But yeah, I'm delighted it's happening. I think it's a different fight. Travelling down to Cork yesterday, I was travelling down with Niall Bourne and Tommy McCormick. They're both two very experienced boxing coaches. And it was great getting their perspective of if the rematch was to happen. And we were only talking in possibilities. And the knowledge was brilliant to, breaking the fight down. We won't go into it in too much detail, but it's sort of what we've all been saying. Conor needs to not throw the knockout shots and, pepper and build from there, because you're not going to out cardio with Diaz. But it's finally happened. So,
I'll say one thing as well.
We'll talk about it in August.
Yeah, well, I'll say one other thing about it. As I said, it's kind of made itself more interesting. I think if you actually look at it this way, it's probably the most interesting fight in MMA in a long time, just because of the backstage stuff and the stuff that's happening behind the scenes. Like, the work it took for the UFC to make this fight and for this fight to actually come together. If you video package that, it's probably one of the most interesting, and like that could be a film, like that could be a movie. You know, just getting that fight happening, getting that fight to happen. So I will say that, like, when they do finally fight, and you know it comes to weigh-in day and it comes to all that, and hopefully the UFC acknowledge all the stuff that happens, and hopefully they say that Conor was looking for time off and all this, and they play it out the way it happened. You know, it's a very interesting story. You know, so I will say that it should be a good fight anyway.
It's the interesting thing I found about it was Dana White came out and said, you know, Conor was obsessed with getting this fight. So interesting. So right, we'll go on to what is like the weirdest, insanest, fascinating thing on Instagram. Maybe post your webcam. I don't understand this. Carl, get your beard out for the lads.
Yeah,
it's hard to say in the light, but
yeah. Come here. Let me take this lamp. Fuck me lamp up. Yeah, so it's the beard is getting there. It's actually hilarious because we just said this in passing. I shaved my beard by accident, and we were like, I started to come into the show, and I said to Robert, I was like, you know what we should do? When I grow my beard back, we should document the fucker up onto Instagram. Sure, why not? We'll see what happens. All of a sudden, I have a fucking cult following. So I'm hoping
fucking pack of fucking losers.
Yeah, well, come here, look, losers may be losers. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for those people that have, like, you know, they have low self-confidence. You know, I don't mind that. You know, we'll sneak it in there. We'll fucking brainwash them, and then hopefully I'll have a blowjob 7 days a week. So, you know, we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
and all this came from
considering our majority is men. You know, kind of weird, but grand, man. No.
Doesn't matter.
Whatever floats your boat, amigo.
Just don't. As long as the teeth aren't too sharp, I don't mind.
Right then, lads, I have to say, I missed the first fight I got to see last night. Was Jesus way up the card. The first fight I got to see was Brian Ortega taking on Clay Guida.
What a great fight!
Yeah, but I seen the reaction on Twitter and Facebook for the opening fight of the night, and I said to myself, I have to get my eyes on this. Now, even though you knew the result, and you know when you hear so much about a fight, you think, right, is it going to be that good? So you had Marco Polo Diaz versus Dong Hyun Kim. How was that, Rob? That all right, was it?
Yeah, Dong Hyun Kim, yeah.
That's all right, and I have to say, it was like Rock'em Sock'em Robots of just Rock'em Sock'em Robots full with blood. It was an absolute barn burner of a fight. My God, Reyes eventually got the job done in the third round, but not before. We've actually nearly mentioned a couple of fights from last week as well, but we talked about fighters walking through adversity and being tested, and holy shit, them two fighters deserving of fight of the night. Stunning fight.
Yeah, it was madness. The first tweet that I put out on Twitter, obviously last night, was just offense. That's what it was. It was just offense. It was like 99% offense, 1% defense, and that was when Dong Hyun moved his head one time to the left.
Yeah, that one time.
That one time, and the rest was just, you know, landing shots, coming forward, everything. It was a great fight to watch. Obviously not the most technical fight, but it was phenomenal.
Absolutely, it was just I couldn't like the shots that were landing, and it came in nearly had him. It looked like he had Reyes finished in the first round, and he landed a beautiful little short elbow that put him on his back, and it was just like watching it back and forth. I was exhausted watching it.
Yeah, that fight was 15 minutes of jizz noises pretty much. It was a crazy fight. I genuinely, it's one of them fights that you're telling people and you're going like, you want to see the Marco Polo Reyes fight versus Dong Hyun Kim. It's actually crazy, and you go, right, I'll watch the fight. It can't possibly be as mad as what they're saying, and it's fucking madder. That was an absolutely crazy fight. Like, I was sitting next to Robert watching it, and I think it took to the second round before Dong Hyun Kim actually slipped the punch.
Yeah.
Like genuinely, I said to him, I was like, I think that's the first time someone has slipped a punch like intentionally. There was
Yeah,
barely any of that in the fight. It's just those two lads stood in front of each other and tried to take each other's heads off. It was a great
yeah,
fight.
yeah. Amazing. And we won't go through the full undercard because I
No,
don't think Noel obviously didn't see the full card because he was in
no.
Cork.
Yeah,
But
I was
we'll pick
surprised
out.
with Alex Caceres beating
Yeah,
Paul Miller though.
yeah, and he beat the brakes off him as well. He looked fantastic. Like Alex Caceres, like for me, he looks great in sections, and then he walks into something stupid, and he did at the end of the fight. He nearly lost it, but for 95% of that fight, he won it. And he looked
Mm.
great. Conor Miller didn't really get started. On the feet, Alex looked very, very good. On the ground, he's always been good. Um, so yeah, it was a great fight. Is there any other fights there, Carl, that stick out in your mind in the undercard before we move on to the main card?
That fight was my under the radar fight actually.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
Yeah. On the undercard, you had Beneil Dariush versus James Vick. That was that was a serious performance from Beneil
yeah,
Dariush. Um, like Dariush came into that fight with a serious chip on his shoulder. He lost to Michael Chiesa in his last fight. And I know you picked against. I think you didn't pick, but was your under the radar fight, Robert?
yeah.
And you said you were fancying Dariush, and I said to
Against
you,
Chiesa.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And
yeah, yeah.
I said to you, like, don't count Chiesa out.
Mm.
He's tough. Dariush is better on paper, but I think Chiesa is better. Just mixed martial arts fighter. And he went out and he lost that fight, and then in this fight, he really came in with something to prove.
Yeah,
Um, James Vick is one of them fighters. To be honest, I really couldn't give a shit about him. I never, anytime I watch one of his fights, I was nearly falling asleep. To be honest with you, um, and Dariush just beat the brakes off him. It was a great fight. It was a great
yeah.
knockout.
What was
Um,
my under the radar like the Sean Strickland Tom Breeze fight? It's a split
Oh,
decision.
that a lot of people were booing on that fight. That was a very, very good fight. Like
Very technical.
it was, yeah, very, very technical. Like to put in the contrast, before that fight, Luis Henrique da Silva fought Jonathan Wilson, and it was a good fight. It's a fight that you could probably go back and watch, but it was two prospects who are still very, very raw, and
Mm.
they just kind of threw down. And again, it was similar to the opener where there wasn't a lot of defense, and you're just kind of throwing shots and walking through shots. So it was a good fight. But then the Strickland fight with Tom Breeze, very technical. Not a lot of not much between the two guys. I did score for Breeze. Strickland won it in the end, didn't he? He won it by
Yeah,
yeah,
split.
he
By
did.
Yeah,
decision.
Yeah, I scored it for Braves, but it wasn't a robbery. It could have went either way. It was a great, great fight, I thought.
that's
Very
that
close.
was Tom Breeze's first loss as a professional.
Yeah, and then my under the radar was Brian Ortega versus Clay Guida, which you did see. Holy
Yeah,
shit! Um, Obviously we know how it finished. Crazy knee.
yeah.
But who did you have that fight score to going into the end of that?
Do you know what? I watched it and I was tired watching it. So when you're sort of just
Yeah,
watching and you're not really scoring it. I thought Clay was doing. See, it's very hard to score a Clay Guida fight because he moves so much that you almost think he's the one doing all the work. I
yeah,
definitely think he was 2 rounds up though. Ortega was bossing the third round. I just
yeah,
think Ortega said it actually in the post press that he felt he was just in awe that he was fighting Clay Guida because he grew up watching him. So he was almost going, oh my God, I'm hitting Clay Guida. But yeah, I thought Clay Guida was doing a lot of work. His boxing looked a lot better. He looked a lot more technical rather than just a wild blanket look from Street Fighter. He
yeah,
looked good. His movement was good, but he was bound down every time. You could see it. He was bound down, and Ortega's corner pointed that out to him as well.
yeah.
And
I
then
thought
that knee was, geez, a beautiful knee.
phenomenal. Yeah, yeah. It was a great fight. I think I had it to Ortega, but that could be just a bias because I do like him. I think he's a great fighter, but it was a really
Anyway,
good fight.
you had him winning after 2 rounds or
I
three
don't
rounds?
know. After three, like I think I had him winning 2 rounds to one, but I'd have to go back and watch it. I probably
Mm.
didn't. I'm trying. I
His
probably get
co-
mixed up with fights.
his
Yeah,
corner
his
was
corner
roaring on
was.
him. You gotta get a
Yeah,
finish. You need to finish this fight.
yeah,
You're losing.
yeah. No, but again, I just thought he was landing the cleaner shots,
Mm.
and I'm sure his corner, in a close fight, the smart thing to say to your fighter is, get the finish because we don't know if you're gonna win it anyway. So
Mm.
Maybe
You
it
could
was a
say
bit of
that, but
that.
my argument would be there as well. Judges are listening to you too. So if a judge hears your corner screaming,
Yeah.
"You're losing, you're losing, you're losing,"
Yeah.
you're
No,
planting that seed.
yeah. And maybe I didn't. I just thought, yeah, I could be getting mixed up with fights, but I thought that
I'm
as far as I
I'm not
remember,
saying you're wrong, Rob. I'm just saying you're not right. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly. So, good fight though, and amazing
Yeah, it was a
finish.
good fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good fight for me to come in for because I sort of was sitting down when I got in and I thought, oh, I hope the fights are good tonight because I'm knackered. I have to, try and stay awake, So they were good fights and they kept me. So then we moved on to the
Uh,
main card. Sorry, Carlito, go ahead.
yeah, that the Clay Guida versus Ortega fight. For me, it was one of them fights in the back of my mind. I was going like, oh, for fuck's sake, Ortega, do something, do something. And then I was looking at it going, Clay could be up, but then you could see where certain things could have been given to Ortega because Clay pretty much in that second round all he done was move. He didn't land much damage.
Yeah.
Ortega landed the more powerful strikes. There wasn't a whole lot of them, but that's what I was scoring. But in the back of my mind, I was saying Clay could be up. You probably need to do something. And ultimately, I'm glad that Brian Ortega knocked Clay Guida out. I can't stand Clay Guida.
This was a card of people you hate, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just don't like Clay Guida. The day he turned around and called Conor McGregor a leprechaun, to me, that's a racial slur. That's what that is to me. That pisses me off. So I was
Didn't
like,
like it.
yeah. Like I was sitting with Robert and I was like, oh, fuck this piece of shit. But yeah, I can't stand Clay Guida. But yeah, I'm happy Ortega won. It was a great knockout. You should definitely go back and watch it. But if it was me, I'd fast forward those first two rounds because there's not really much that happened. So just go straight to
Yeah.
the knockout. Yeah.
So then we moved on to the lightweight division in the first fight on pay-per-view. If you're in the United States of America, when you're over here, it's free. So yeah, you Dustin Poirier taking on Bobby Green. Poirier has a lot of heat behind him since he moved up to the lightweight division. He's looked a lot better up there, and he didn't disappoint again. Now it was quite funny in my opinion watching the fight. As we were watching it, we all seen Bobby Green was melting. He was doing his typical, almost like the Diaz, hey, what you got? You got nothing, you got nothing. And then he got caught and he went down. But it got to a stage in it. It was a little reminiscent of Conor McGregor against Nate Diaz, where Poirier almost looked like in danger of overloading and blowing himself out. And just as Joe Rogan started to say that, he landed the big shot and put Green out.
Yeah.
Like Bobby Green, it was really weird. Like when he finished, when Poirier was getting up after off the corpse, let's say, Bobby Green started clapping him like straight away, like,
Yeah.
and it was weird because I think he's just like, you know what, motherfucker, you just got me.
Yeah.
It was actually, it's fucked up because me and Robert were watching the fights last night and we were like, oh, lovely first fight in the main card. Here we go. All the lads' picks are coming up. Here's our fight predictions. Let's go, Poirier. And literally a second before the knockout, the skybox turned on and the Chromecast we were watching the fights through went off. We missed the knockout live when it happened. And we were like, you piece of shit, what the fuck?
Came back and Poirier's walking around like, oh, I won.
I was like, fuck you and your telly anyway, you cunt. But yeah, where it was actually, we only got to see the replay, so there was a lot of angry things said after that happened. But yeah, like Bobby Graham was clowning pretty much, and he paid the price.
Yeah,
and that's what happens.
It's similar to the Anderson Silva stuff, where when he got knocked out by Chris Weidman, and we can sit here and we can say, oh well, he shouldn't have done that, but that's something that brought Anderson Silva not all of his success, but a lot of his success. So, saying that, oh, he shouldn't have clowned, he shouldn't have, moved the way he did, or he shouldn't have done this or that. You can say that, but again, that's something that brings success, and it's the same with Bobby Green. That's the thing that he does in every fight. So you can't really go back and say, oh, well, if he didn't do that, he might have won, because that's his game, that's what he does, and Poirier looks phenomenal.
I didn't have a problem with Bobby Green was doing it. It's just that's how he fights. It's almost like the Stockton thing as well. And
it makes him look a little bit silly when
you get caught. That's the risk, isn't it? But like he'd wobbled Poirier as well at one stage when they were at the cage. He caught Poirier, and you could see Poirier took a step back because he felt it, and you can see him in the presser. He had a big black eye as well. Like, but no, Poirier looked fantastic. I just thought if Bobby Green, it was like what Joe Rogan was doing. If Bobby Green didn't get hit and the round continued with Poirier landing and throwing with such ferocity, he was in danger. It looked like he was in danger of blown out.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He landed the knockout shot, and he fucking looks great at lightweight.
Yeah, he's on an absolute tear. Every time Poirier is fighting, I'm actually excited to see him because he's turned into a knockout artist. He's doing
Yeah.
really, really well.
And
It's nice
as
to see
well,
him do well.
as well, like he's always been great offensively. Defensively, he's always shown a little bit of frailty in a way.
Yeah.
I think he is kind of plugging those holes up as well. I'm not saying it again. He's plugging the holes up again. But as you said, he did get caught again. Stop, Carl. He did get hit again. Didn't get rocked this time, but yeah, can't wait to see his next fight. He's not long away from the title fight, really. He gets
He's calling for the top 5, yeah.
Yeah, if he gets the top 5 fight, can win that. He's right in a show, and he does
I
have
could
that
see
little
him,
bit
like,
of Conor McGregor effect as well, because he was in there with Conor, so he obviously had a lot of eyeballs on him. So a lot of people do know him. That's a big thing.
Like I was watching it, like, and in my top presses, I'm thinking, right, RDA is fighting Alvarez. Like, I think you put Poirier in there with Alvarez, you could finish him.
He could.
So he's not. You know what I mean? He's not that far away from the title fight,
No, but that division's crazy. Anyone can be anyone.
Yeah. And then we move on to, for me, this was a very close contender as well for fight tonight, apart from the madness that was the first of the opening fight. Dan Henderson taking on Hector Lombard. Lombard came in and was looking like he was pumped up with a bicycle pump. He looked like the old Lombard we all know and would recognise. But when the fight started, you could see Lombard was afraid of the right hand. Not afraid, respected the right hand.
Rightfully so.
Yeah, 100%. Like, one thing we said when we spoke about the fight, I had said that I just felt that Henderson, time had expired. He's got a few bad finishes on his end, and I said, but he has that big equaliser in that right hand.
Yeah.
And that's sort of how the first round played out. They were a bit tentative towards one another. Then Henderson landed a big shot, hurt Lombard. Lombard backed off, but then caught Henderson almost away. Him and Shogun were back and forth with one another. He just Hendo just stands in them crazy brawls. And then all of a sudden it goes to the ground because Dan got caught. Lombard was sort of going for like an Americana / straight arm lock. And I thought he rushed that position. I thought he should have stayed in that crucifix and landed elbows. But as soon as the round ended, they had a little trade again, and Dan went down heavy against the cage, but said he survived. But as soon as it went out of round 1, I was sitting here going, fuck. Carl Doran sitting there now going, fucking Hendo time. And I knew it. It was as clear for me at the end of the first round, even though Dan Henderson was nearly put out, I knew there was only one winner in that fight after the first round ended.
Yeah, like for me, that's why I picked Dan Henderson. Hector Lombard doesn't move. He's very, very static. And I said that, if it goes past round 1, Henderson wins that fight all day.
Yeah.
He has more cardio than him, whatever, Henderson has taken some beatings, but his chin, while he gets dropped, wherever, his recovery rate is unbelievable. For a man of 45 years of age, with the amount of miles on him, is absolutely ridiculous. I was watching the fight with Robert. As you say, when Lombard was on top in that crucifix position, all I was saying was, get safe, get into full guard, stay there, keep him there, hold on, don't do anything silly, recover. That's all I was saying, because I knew as soon as I got to that second round, Henderson would have him. And then sure enough, in the second round, Dan landed that big H-bomb and put him out.
The big kick as well, and then it was like a backward elbow. He just sort of came backing him.
It was the elbow, sorry. But then, like, even that elbow knocked him down, and he was pretty much out. The shot on the ground for ground and pound, it was shades of what he done to Michael Bisping. It was scary. Hector Lombard was actually laid out in that fight. Like, for me, Lombard coming up against anybody half decent, I'd go, I said it about him last week. I said, he's overhyped. He's not as good as everybody makes him out to be. He's for someone that's supposed to be like such an amazing fighter, if you get him out around one, he's basically not going to cause you any trouble as long as you can stay out of his power range. That's it. Just don't clinch up with him. You won't get thrown, and basically fight on the outside. That's all you have to do. That's it. That's how you beat Hector Lombard. I'm saying that, and it's making it like sound more easier than it actually is. But ultimately, if you're like, a UFC caliber fighter, that's your bread and butter, is like a decent game plan to beat Hector Lombard, and if you do that, you'll beat him well.
Yeah.
I said it last night. Is it maybe time for the potential for Hector Lombard to be cut from the UFC? He'd be on a shitload of money, but let's be honest, he's had a few bad beats now. He got popped for steroids. He was out for a long time. Is it really worth paying him that much to hold on to him when he's not really going anywhere? He had to move up from the last division because he couldn't get anywhere in that division, and he's supposed to be the bigger man there.
Yeah.
Now he's at middleweight, and he's muscular. He's by no means the bigger man. By no means.
No, like when he came out there, he looked huge. But even with Dan Henderson, stature-wise, he didn't look as big. He looked like quite similar, but again, Dan isn't a huge middleweight. But if he was in there with the likes of Luke Rockhold, he'd look really undersized.
I said it last night, Robert, and I made you laugh. Where you were like, "Jesus, Lombard is huge." I was like, "Yeah, but he's still a little bollocks."
Yeah.
Like he's a big, small man.
Yeah. Yeah, like the interesting thing about our picks for that, nobody was really wrong in a way. Like obviously me and Noel and Dan picked against.
No, you was wrong.
No, but as in picking the actual fight, we all kind of said the exact same thing. We all said if it gets out of the second round, he'd be in trouble. They're gonna stand in front of each other. Whoever lands the big shot will probably win, or whoever can get them out there early. And that's the way it played out. Dan, as you said, has he gets dropped now. He used to never get dropped, but he gets dropped now. But he has ridiculous recovery speed. Like when he was falling and hitting the ground, he looked out.
Yeah.
He looked out when he hit the ground. It looked like he woke back up, and then was back in the fight. Lombard, I think, was trying to preserve his energy on the ground in that crucifix position, looking for the Kimura. But if he just unloaded a couple of more shots, he might have actually got him out of there. But it was an amazing knockout. Like that elbow was just crazy. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I was delighted. Like it's weird. Like as much as we do the picks, you know what I mean. You do them, but when you see like you were saying it last week, Carl, like how could you pick against a legend? And sometimes a legend has to fall. And I thought that this was going to be the occasion. That was fucking so poetic. But it's just you then had Hendo in the cage after talking about retirement.
Yeah, I kind of hope that it is his last one. That'll
tell you that that was playing in his mind going into the fight as well. So that, in fairness, if you're thinking like that going in, it's pretty impressive to pull out a performance like that.
That's what I said to Robert though last night. I was like, if you're thinking of retiring, that's even more reason to go out and win.
In a way, well, like they all want to win.
In my eyes, your retirement fight is your last title fight. That's how you're going to be remembered for the next while, depending on obviously how successful your career is. But your last fight is your last.
Well, not really for Dan Henderson though. Dan Henderson will be remembered for pride and remembered for all that kind of stuff. But
that's what I said.
I get what you mean. Depends on the fight.
Yeah, you basically treat your last fight like a title fight, in my opinion. It's for yourself, you're known. I went out and I won my last fight. For me, at my age, what I've done, I'm the best. Coming out on a loss, it's a different mindset.
It'd be amazing.
That's a lovely fairy tale, to end on a loss. But you know what I mean. Let's be honest. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't have a happy ending.
No. This game is built for that. No, built for going in there and getting chewed up by a young guy and.
Yeah, well, that's it. Normally, when you're the old lion, you know what I mean. It's the young, the young pride that comes up and unfortunately, So then moving up the card, then we have the featherweight division where we had a few choice names from last night, didn't we, Rob? Me and Rob were tweeting another Max 2 for 50 Holloway taking on Ricardo Lamas, and holy fuck, how good is Max Holloway?
So good. He's ridiculous. He's amazing. He's just a great fight. I love watching Max Holloway fight.
Jesus, do you want to suck his dick on you?
Yeah, kind of do. Nah, but he's just his movement. Every movement he makes means something. Every strike he throws to land, or at least he throws to be an effective strike. There's no every movement just means something. Unfortunately, he didn't get the finish, and I think
not for the Willis Ryan.
Yeah, at the end of the fight, and he was basically saying, "Come on, let's throw down."
Yeah, that was cool.
And he was still was technical there with his head moving, but whatever. He didn't get the finish, and I think he kind of needs that just to kind of stand out because we watch it. We're big fans, and we know what we're looking at for the most part, and we can see he fought an amazing fight. But for the casual fan, when you have all these knockouts and all these submissions around him, casual fan, they want to see finishes, and I think Max Holloway knows that. Like if he got a big win, a big knockout victory there, he's well in the shout of getting a title fight. But because it was a decision, I think the casuals, as I said, kind of look at it and say, "Oh, well, he just won by decision," even though it was probably one of the most dominant performances that you'll see this year.
Yeah, like that fourth round for me was a 10-8. Ricardo Lamas done sweet fuck all.
Yeah.
I think Max definitely destroyed him in those first two rounds, and then it came to the third round, and he kind of coasted a bit. And I said that last night. I said, "You are well up on the cards here. Don't do anything stupid. Just fucking, if you have to coast in the last round, coast. A win's a win." But that's just how I think. Not everybody's gonna think that way. Some people just want to see the finish. Personally, I like seeing fighters. I like win. In this case, I'm a huge Max Holloway fan. I've been watching him since he came over to the UFC. You see him turn from a young prospect into a genuine contender for that title. Like he skilled Ricardo Lamas. Like he made him look silly. It was a great fight. Great fight.
Yeah, look, I was watching I'm the same. I remember watching Max Holloway when he first came in, and he's just like a little scrawny little fucker. Like I was like, I used to buy black cats off you at Halloween out in town. Like, but I have to say, his movement last night, he seemed to have. You were saying it, Rob. He wanted to almost to get the finish. He was like super aggressive in his attacks. But it was his movement, the way he was slipping, sliding, and landing the big shots. And then it was almost like he was like, right, Lamas is comfortable here, and just went at him and would land a 6, 7, 8 combination and then back up and go at him. He was just super aggressive. He looked phenomenal in there. Yeah. And this is the fight I was saying. This is the one example of what we're saying about the McGregor Diaz being a nothing fight. In a sense, it's holding up Max Holloway.
Yeah.
Like he's asked, "What's next for you, Max Holloway?" And he's going, "Well, you just want to come to Hawaii because I'm not getting a title fight."
Yeah.
So, like, who's next for Max Holloway? What, he beat the shit out of fucking Chad Mendes?
Yeah, it's probably gonna have to be something like that because you have that interim title fight unless he waits and then fights for the interim title, against.
Unless they make an interim title.
The UFC, you never know. They're going that way, aren't they?
Yeah. But like it's just this is my one argument. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to speak bad about Conor McGregor because we love him. But like this is it's just holding up the whole division in that sense. Like Max Holloway, the good thing for Max Holloway is Max Holloway's got time on his side. Do you know what I mean? He's a young fighter. While if you take Frankie Edgar, I know Frankie's fighting for the interim, but you look at Frankie, he's the older man, you know what I mean? And by the time 145 comes back around again for Conor, he's fighting in August, October at the earliest, November.
Yeah, like I'd be fairly, accepting if they take the title from Conor if he doesn't fight at 145 after the Nate Diaz fight. If he fights again away from the division, there's no point. Like just take the belt. He's a champion, and just take the belt. Let him vacate that and let him move on to whatever he wants to do. But the guys like Max Holloway, like the UFC should be putting like tons of promotion on the guys like him.
Yeah.
Smart guy and great fighter. Marketable in my opinion. I think you should be putting a lot of promotional muscle into him. And,
I think Max Holloway is we can't call him a dark horse anymore, but I always thought, even when he fought Conor, I thought this was a dangerous fight for Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
And since then, he's come on every time you see him, he's a new wrinkle to his game, and
Yeah.
he's just a improvement. Like he looks to pack more power. I know he didn't finish the fight last night, but he looks like he throws with more heat.
Yeah.
I was hugely impressive. Obviously, we haven't touched on this fight yet, but we all know he was hugely impressive on it. But for me, Max Holloway was a fighter who again is walking out. The casual fan mightn't pay attention to it, but I'm paying attention to it. And Max Holloway is, for me, is definitely a future UFC champion. He just has everything, and he has it in abundance. And he's so young, and he's learning. Like, he's fucking slick on the ground too, but he doesn't show it.
His takedown defense last night was unbelievable. Like, it was actually ridiculous how many takedowns he stuffed, and he didn't even look in trouble.
Yeah, and it's not just a takedown defense. He'll get put up against the cage, and he'll get away from the cage immediately. There's no waist up against the cage. He's not getting put up there and points getting scored against him. He's immediately getting out of there, or at least landing shots.
He looks bigger as well, though. He doesn't look as
well. He's still
bulked up a bit.
Growing, yeah.
He's bulked up, yeah. But but for me, an amazing performance from Max Holloway. Yeah. Sort of laser Carlo Lamas now. He's going to be the gatekeeper, isn't he? He's going to be the top 5 gatekeeper. At one stage they thought Lamas was potential in the division. He's going to be the top 5 gatekeeper. He came. I agree with what you said, Carl. It was more Holloway took his foot off the gas in the 3rd round, more so than Lamas came into the fight. Yeah. But Max Holloway, for me, looked the absolute business last night. Didn't get any fight awards or anything last night, but unfortunately that's what happens when you end up on a card that's fucking sick.
Yeah.
So we move on to the bantamweight, the co-main event of the evening, the rubber match between your champion Dominic Cruz against Uriah Faber. I believe I called it perfectly.
Yeah, I think
win decision.
Yeah.
Movement, he wasn't there for Uriah to land shots. Anytime Uriah tried to land, Dominic wasn't there to be hit. He put Uriah down on his arse a couple of times in the fight. Almost looked like he had him out of there. Dominic Cruz display, his movement is just so unorthodox.
Yeah. He looks like he's playing a different game than everybody else in that division. Really does. Uriah just couldn't get into the fight at all. He did land a couple of decent strikes, and again, it wasn't a bad performance by Uriah. He's just 2 steps behind Dominic Cruz, and I think by the end of the 5th round, or even the end of the 4th round, you could kind of see it in Uriah thinking, I'm not going to beat this guy. I'm just not going to beat him. And Dominic looked great again. I don't know who you match him up against next. I'd love to see him at featherweight. I'd love to see him fight a couple of featherweights, to be honest.
Well, they were talking about Demetrius Johnson, weren't they?
I'd like to see the Demetrius Johnson fight. I think you'd have to favour Dominic because he's getting even bigger. Like, I don't know how he makes that weight. He looks huge. But you'd have to favour Dom in that fight. But I'd like to see it because Demetrius has obviously got a lot better since the last fight. Clearly, like, head and shoulders better than he used to be, even though he was a great fighter at the time. But again, I'd love to see Dom fight some featherweights. I think he could be really competitive up there, especially with his movement and his speed.
That fight against DJ, that's the fight I want to see, to be honest with you.
It is a super fight, in fairness. They're going on about super fights. That is a super fight.
It's pound for pound number 1 in the world, Demetrius Johnson, going against a guy that, let's be honest, I think Dominic Cruz would have been making that run for pound number 1 if he hadn't had those injuries.
He must be with a shout now as well. Like, he must be up there in top 5 at least.
Yeah, like that's the fight I want to see. I'm not even leaning towards Dominic Cruz in that fight. I'm leaning towards Demetrius Johnson. I think DJ he's come on leaps and bounds. That fight he had with Dominic Cruz before, like, that was a close competitive fight, and I think DJ is he's even better than he was. Like, back then. I'd be leaning towards DJ. That'd just be an amazing fight to watch in terms of just how technical the movement, the hand speed, everything. That would just be an absolute pleasure to watch. That'd be an amazing fight. That's the one I want to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is one of the super fights, and it's weird because it's almost like we spoke about this before. They just look past DJ for some reason as this big superstar, but like this is the sort of fight that put him in there with Dominic Cruz, and if DJ got the job done, that would rocket launch him as the superstar he rightly
Yeah,
should be. Like I think, as much as Cruz, you're gonna have to forgive my impersonation of movement here, but so sometimes when he comes in, he just sort of ducks down like that, and
yeah.
I just think that DJ could catch that with a kick and flick
Cool,
throw it
yeah.
up so quick, you know. But
He's
like,
gonna switch it up though. Like
yeah,
it's not he doesn't do the same movements. Like
yeah,
he'll
yeah.
double on one side. He won't just obviously go left and right. So
Has to be
yeah,
infuriating to fight him.
yeah,
Has to be
yeah.
infuriating
You
to
don't know what
fight
he's
him.
gonna do.
You
Yeah,
must feel like
Like,
just grabbing, going, "Come here, you fucking bollocks, you."
like you could clearly see it towards the end of that fight how fucking frustrated Uriah
yeah,
Faber was.
Yeah,
You know, that's what Dominic Cruz does to you. Do you know how you have those fighters that are a wrestler and they just grind on you and you're like, Jesus, what do I have to do to beat him? That's what Dominic Cruz does, but with boxing.
it's
yeah,
the
And his
opposite of.
movement. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like he is so fast and his cardio is ridiculous that he tires you out because you're trying to chase him.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
impossible. Like Ali used to tire people out by being hit, like the whole rope-a-dope thing, and he'd move his head out of the way and stuff,
yeah,
and people would try to go to his body or whatever to tire him out. Dominic Cruz does that, except he doesn't get hit
yeah.
at all. You know what I mean? He just doesn't get hit. He's not there.
And his angles as well. Like he throws strikes from these weird angles that you just don't know what strike he's gonna throw. You don't know, where he's gonna be when after he throws a strike because he doesn't show the exact same techniques. Like he'll throw a strike, end up somewhere, and then throw a strike and then end up on a different angle again. So it's just he's amazing to watch, and yeah, I can't wait for his next fight. It's just great to see that he got two camps done back to back, two fights back to back without getting injured. Hopefully that's things to come,
Well, the
Yeah.
foot was bandaged up last night. That he was
Yeah,
saying it was causing him problems in camp, but not in the fight.
Yeah.
yeah,
Did you see him and Uriah going at it in the post presser as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Dominic Cruz called him out on the shit, like, basically saying, I love how after you lose to me, you start promoting your own fighters because
yeah,
you make money off them if they get to fight me. And that immediately put Uriah Faber on the back foot,
yeah,
Um, yeah, like you can clearly see they're two people that it's not even that they hate each other, they
yeah,
just don't get along. They're
yeah.
just two of those people, you just can't put them in the same
Two
room.
completely different personalities. They're just never gonna get along. Just
Yeah.
clash. Just clash. Anytime they're in the room together, you can see they could
yeah.
try to be cordial and then they just clash.
Yeah, they just
And
don't get along. Simple as like.
talking about two people who don't get along, let's move it along to the main event of the evening. We had the middleweight title strap up for grabs. Your defending champion Luke Rockhold taking on Michael the Count Bisping. And what was it? 17 days notice, was it?
So, yeah, they
Yeah,
said
so,
2 weeks,
yeah.
so yeah, it was.
So I'm watching it, and
Say
we
the
all broke
result.
it.
Say the
We all-
result. If nobody knows what the result was.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. If anybody is listening to this who doesn't know the results,
Never know.
you're
Michael
tuning
Bisping
into the wrong thing. Michael Bisping won. But I'm watching it, right, and as a starting, I thought, right, Luke Rockhold, I'm watching him coming in. You know the way they show all the video, I'm grand. And when Bisping was walking out, he looked real relaxed. He was going to his family. He was doing all this. But then, to me, as I was watching, he was waving at everyone, and he was taking every moment in. And to me, watching it, I was thinking, is he concentrated enough on what's about to happen here? Is he too? You could tell, like, because in fairness, that was his 26th UFC fight, so he was
Yeah.
looking in, soaking up, going, I finally made it. But for me, watching it, I was worried, thinking he's soaking it up too much.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then in comparison, you'd Rockhold walk down looking determined, focused, looked like he just was there to do business. And I was really genuinely worried. And even when they were called into the middle of the cage, when they were talking, Bisping said something and Rockhold touched gloves and Bisping leaned over real, sorry, what did you say? And I was real,
Yeah.
Bisping doesn't seem in fight mode here.
Mm.
And it was weird. But then as soon as the buzzer or John McCarthy went, let's get it on, Rockhold just looked like he had no respect for Bisping. He just thought, I just have to fucking be here to win.
Yeah. It seemed that
He
way,
was,
didn't it? It really did.
yeah,
It
he was
really seemed
throwing a
that way.
real lazy front kick. He landed 2 good heavy leg kicks,
Yeah.
but he was coming in chin up like he was
Yeah.
fighting too tall. And then he overcommitted. Bisping landed a lovely left hook. It was
Yeah.
a left hook. It was left hook, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Pushed him off and then got him done against the cage. Landed a couple of shots and lights out.
Lights
And
out,
no
yeah.
matter as much like Bisping, people have always questioned his power. He's technical, and when you overextend on a shot the way Rockhold did, your momentum is carrying into his momentum, and you're multiplying his counter.
Yeah.
And he just got absolute, and he's been knocked out before. Well, I wouldn't say he's chinny, but he's been out. And Bisping said this before the fight, and
Yeah.
Bisping stepped in and took his opportunity with both hands. And I have to say, I was absolutely delighted for him.
Yeah.
You could just see what it meant to him. And it was just, Bisping, I'm sure Rockhold today, sitting at home, is kicking himself saying, why the fuck did I fight like that? Why didn't I just go in and do what I do? But hindsight's a motherfucker. You didn't respect Bisping and you paid the ultimate price with your chin
Yeah.
and your belt.
Yeah, go back and watch the fight and record back probably 20 seconds before the knockout happens, and Goldie says, Mike Goldberg says, there's a sense of invincibility around Luke Rockhold, and then that happens. I completely understand what you're talking about with Bisping. The way his demeanor during the fight was a lot different than what we kind of come to know of Bisping. When we see him fight in his last however many fights, he has a completely different demeanor than he usually that he did last night. He's more intense and he's more, I suppose, in a way, angry. But he did talk about that, saying that he's trying to move away from that because he thinks that when you come in angry, he doesn't really perform at his best. So I think the way he was acting, he was real relaxed. He was just concentrating on his game. He wasn't really trying to get as hyped up for the fight. And he even said it as well, that he was saying, I should be more hyped up for this fight. I was in there and I didn't feel like, that I'm angry enough or I'm as hyped up for the fight as I should be. So I think that's one of the big things I saw as well, where his demeanor looked completely different than we know of. But then Luke Rockhold, he's always, I wouldn't call him a lackadaisy fighter, but he's always a fighter who will stand back, he'll throw shots. He doesn't really come out the gates really quickly. But he did look like he didn't respect Bisping's power, didn't respect anything that Bisping was going to throw. And it was definitely detrimental to what he wanted to do, because when Bisping caught him and he dropped him, he was completely out. He was on the shaky legs, like so. Phenomenal for Bisping. The stanky legs, yeah. Phenomenal for Bisping. It's great to see him where he came from. Being knocked out by Vitor, everyone saying no, he's not gonna get a shot at the title. Going out there, going a good streak, beating Anderson Silva, the greatest of all time, and going in there and winning the title. Phenomenal.
Yeah, we all picked Luke Rockhold with the exception of Dan Mulvaney.
That was only to be patriotic, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, this is coming from the lads that are Irish that will constantly pick Conor McGregor.
Not Rob Hardaguchi.
Yeah, but that was Neil Seary, and as we all know, Robert is a traitor to his nation. But yeah, I want to say, I'm happy for Dan that the UK finally got a British champion.
And I have to say, sorry, I'm interrupting you, Carl. I have to say, I'm glad it's Bisping too, because he was their original great English hope, if you like.
Imagine though, I was supposed to say it to Dan Hardy last week when we were talking to him. Imagine saying to Dan Hardy before he got to the UFC and when Bisping was there, say, okay, in 2016 you'll be an analyst and you'll be retired, and Michael Bisping will win his first UFC title then.
Yeah.
What would he say? Fuck off.
Yeah. You're just saying that because you're an Irish cunt and you hate England, and you're like, no, that's pretty much it. But I love how Noel was like, shut up. But that fight, we all picked Luke Rockhold, with the exception of Dan, and that was because if you see Luke Rockhold in his past performances, when he shows up, he's a world beater, and there's a reason why he was a champion and he beat Chris Weidman. But genuinely, he came into that fight And as you said, no, he just thought he had to turn up and he would have won. To underestimate Michael Bisping is probably, without a doubt, actually, it's the biggest mistake he's ever made in his entire mixed martial arts career. You cannot underestimate Michael Bisping. He's a dangerous, dangerous fighter. We were just saying that Luke Rockhold, when he turns up, he can beat Bisping, and he would have done it. But Rockhold didn't turn up. He he um he didn't take Bisping seriously, and he paid the ultimate price. I'm chuffed for Bisping. I was heading to a clean sheet last night. I would have been 5-0. But I said to Robert before that fight happened, I said, you know what? I'll gladly take a loss on my record tonight because I'd love to see Michael Bisping as a champion.
Well,
I'm chuffed.
Yeah, no, we were talking just back and forth on Facebook, and I said, no, look, listen, this was with Joe Clancy and the likes, and I was saying, look, listen, I think it's Rockhold's wherever he wants, but if Bisping has to do it, Rockhold starts slow. Bisping's got to get in there, got to land the big shots, and if he does land a shot, he has to take advantage of it and quick. He's to get all the way in or all the way out. Yeah. That's exactly what he done.
Yeah,
like, and Rockhold overcommitted with the big. I think he threw a big left and sort of went past him, and Bisping counter with the left. So he was all the way out, and then he came all the way in and landed that big counter, and that's what started the highway to gold.
Yeah, and I was just showing Carl the other day, it was actually yesterday, I think it was during the day, a Reddit thread that was going around saying, basically the title of the Reddit thread was, is nobody giving Michael Bisping a chance, or can Michael Bisping not win? And my response was simply, if you don't think Michael Bisping has a chance, then you haven't been watching MMA for long enough. This sport is absolute chaos. Anything can happen. Really, anything. We've seen it this year. Like I'm going to try compile a list of all the main event underdogs who've won this year, because I'm pretty sure more underdogs have won in the main event this year than the favourites. I'm pretty sure that has, and if it's not, then whatever. But there has been a lot of them.
Does this go down as the biggest upset now? Does it replace Holly Holm against Ronda Rousey?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
See,
I never actually thought about that.
It's not the sense that I got from it.
He was a 10-1 underdog, though, wasn't
he? Yeah, no, it's huge. It's definitely a huge underdog. It's just not the sense. Like when it happened, I was like, oh my god. But it's not like it's not that the initial sense wasn't, oh my god, it's the biggest upset. You know what I mean?
I think it couldn't potentially make it the biggest upset simply because of the way that Bisping beat him.
Maybe, yeah.
Because if you were to say that Michael Bisping was going to win that fight, you would have said on point. He starched him in the fourth round. Like he didn't like TKO him. Luke Rockhold was gone. You know, that's the shocking part.
Yeah.
Yeah, the post press conference was quite fun too. Back and forth, and eventually, like Bisping, after about half an hour of the press conference, turned around and said, look, listen, I really do respect Rockhold. He's a great fighter. He's a world champion. I want to thank him for making me raise my game. Yeah. He said, you've made me a better fighter, and thank you for the opportunity. And Rockhold was just having none of it. He was just like, yeah, well, Michael's a dick, but he's a tough dick. But I want to fight him again, and I'll finish him and knock him out and all, because he's a fucking bloody blah. And Bisping turned around and went, how do them lemons taste? You know what I mean? So fucking bitter, you know? And you just see in that press conference, the post, that like Bisping just gets under Rockhold's skin, like no ifs, ands or buts about it. He just rubs him up the wrong way, the same way Uriah Faber and Dominic Cruz. They're just, and I just think this sets up a lot of matchups. Like I think Jacare, I was saying this today to someone who work. They were like, who gets the next title shot? Will it be an automatic rematch? And I said, no, I think Weidman and Rockhold will go because they were scheduled to fight. And I think Jacare will probably, because he technically won the #1 contenders fight in the last fight against Belfort. But then I went, and you never know, the UFC, Hendo Bisping too.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I
don't like it. Lar Bourne put up saying, would they do it? And I said, well, no, you've Henderson talking about hanging up the gloves. If he doesn't hang up the gloves and he fights Bisping, let's say, perfect scenario for Dan Henderson, he wins. That's another fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's all of a sudden he's talking about retiring after this fight, so he's guaranteed, because he's not going to win the belt and then go, I'm retired. You know what I mean? The UFC don't want that, you know. So I think it'll go Weidman, Rockhold, and Bisping, and probably fight
Yeah.
Jacare.
I've no disrespect to Bisping, but you can really see that title now bouncing around a couple of different hands now over the next year and a half. You could
Well,
really see.
everyone thought Weidman was going to rule the roost, and then everyone
Yeah,
thought
then,
Rockhold was going to rule the
exactly,
roost.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then everyone probably will. On the read I get for it is that everyone doesn't think that Bisping will. Maybe he
Yeah,
will. You
yeah.
never know. But I could
Come
really
here,
see, Jacare winning.
a man who's worked so hard to get to the top of the mountain is going to be fucking hard to pull down from the top.
That's true. Yeah, it's true.
Beautiful, no, beautiful.
Beautiful.
And speaking about getting pulled down from the top of your mountain, there was some crazy news as well that just before the main event last night, that the top journalist in MMA, Mr. Ariel Helwani, and his crew were escorted out by Zuffa security. So his credentials were taken, and he's basically told he's got a lifetime ban from all Zuffa events. This is Ariel Helwani you're talking about, the man who, right, he wasn't working for the UFC, but he was working for Fox a couple of months ago. So he gets dropped from Fox, and then he gets put out last night. Now the talk of it is that it's for breaking the Brock Lesnar news and breaking the McGregor Diaz news. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is a journalist's job not to find and report news, confirm it once he does, and we all know Ariel Helwani does not post clickbait media. He researches and he breaks news. He's the biggest breaker of mixed martial arts news in the world. So to me, it looks like the UFC, don't get me wrong, they've probably spent a lot of money on that ad and promoted it and wanted to have the big surprise. But a journalist should not be controlled. We spoke about this with a bit of a run-in with a couple of media outlets over here. A journalist should not be controlled in any way of what he or she should be able to report. If Ariel Helwani has found a story, it's his right as a journalist to report that story.
It's his responsibility as a journalist.
Exactly. So now I put this up on Facebook today, and a good few people came back and they were saying, well, the UFC are pissed because they want it as a surprise. So fucking what? My comparison is always Sky Sports News. Now, don't get me wrong, I know Sky Sports News is a complete mindfuck of mental repeating itself every 15 minutes. But do you think that Manchester United would have liked to have announced Jose Mourinho as their manager? Of course they would have. But they didn't, because the media outlet got a smell of it and released it, and that's how things come out. Yeah. So you put it the other way. If Ariel Helwani has to turn around and say to the UFC, okay, so I know about this, but I won't say it. That's not journalism. That's being controlled by the man.
Exactly,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Fuck the man.
Fuck the man. You know what I mean? Don't get I love what the UFC are, but the UFC in this situation, if this is just because Ariel Helwani is breaking news that they don't want to break of reports, the UFC is nothing more than the big bully in a fucking school ground. He is a reporter, he's a journalist, he's highly thought of by MMA fans, other journalists, and fighters. The fighters fucking love Ariel Helwani. So the UFC has dirtied their bib here, and they've done it in like a dictatorship way. That you've said something that we don't agree with. Apparently there was a leaked message today saying that the UFC should approach the UFC for a comment on it. Like if the UFC commented on it, then he couldn't use it. Fuck that shit. If he's found that news out, you've got a rat in your boat, and someone's telling stories. So it's not Ariel Helwani's fault that someone's telling fucking stories. If he's done research and got a story, that's credit to him, and that's top journalism. I didn't realise I was going to be as passionate about this as I was, but I have been. But the UFC have acted like a bunch of fucking bullies in this, and reinstate Ariel Helwani. # free Ariel.
Yeah, it's not their business to tell him what he can and cannot report. And again, it's completely their right to say who can cover their events. That's fine, but it's a really PR nightmare for them now, throwing out the biggest MMA journalist in this, like the biggest MMA journalist around, taking them out and taking them away from the events. And he has a huge following, and what are they really gaining from this? You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like it's his, as you said, it's his responsibility to, if he finds a story, he finds it ethically. He didn't he didn't, as far as he didn't root around. He
No,
didn't
there's no
do
embargo
all this.
broke. It wasn't
Exactly.
like media were told, "Oh, this is happening tonight,"
Yeah,
and Ariel Helwani went,
exactly.
"Oh,
Yeah,
well, I'll do it." Yeah, that was his sources, his
exactly. Yeah,
resources.
there was no. Yeah, he was completely ethical about it. Went about it the way any journalist would. Broke the story because that's what his job entails. He done that, and then, as I said, the UFC, have every right to say who can and can't, report on their events. But for them, it makes no sense to ban Ariel Helwani from their events because he's, as we said, he's one of the most respected journalists around. He certainly does some of the best coverage for an MMA event around the whole fight week. And then it's just all gonna blow up in their face again. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's silly. Hopefully, again, I'm sure that he will be reinstated. I don't think it's gonna stick, but it's just silly. I just think it's a silly thing for the UFC to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've had the MC talk about the journalists, now you're going to get the fans' point of view. I think the UFC really need to be careful. They need to remember that Ariel Helwani is Jewish and they're acting like Hitler. So yeah, that's very, very dangerous.
Yeah.
You can't do shit like that. Freedom of the press and all that. You can't do it. You just simply can't do it. Do I think Ariel Helwani's going to be reinstated? I think he has no hope in hell.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think he has any hope. When you see the shit that happened with Conor, the biggest draw for UFC 200, and they were like,
But then you see what happened in the end.
yeah, but he's still off the card, but he's on for two. We all knew Conor was going to come back. We said it. We knew he was going to come back. Let's be honest. It wasn't like that relationship was ever going to break down. Conor couldn't fight anywhere else. What's Ariel Helwani to the UFC other than he just broke? Now, I'm playing devil advocate. I'm looking at
The owner of the biggest mixed martial arts podcast in the world.
Yeah, but how does that affect the UFC? They don't get anything out of him whatsoever anymore.
Oh, they get a hell of a lot out of him.
They got a lot out of him.
Yeah, a hell of a lot out of him. His pre-fight, all the stuff he does pre-fight for the UFC, not for the UFC, for obviously himself or for the company he works for, MMA Fighting. That brings a huge kind of hype to the event itself. Like, if you look at the amount of videos that they put up during fight week, the amount of views that they get, that's all media coverage. The UFC want media coverage. They relish on that. That's what the sport needs. It needs media coverage. And if they're getting the most prominent MMA journalists to basically not cover their events, they're losing something.
Well, come here as well.
I don't think they're losing anything. Let's be honest. The people that are watching Ariel Helwani's MMA Hour and people that are following MMAfighting.com and mixed martial arts fans, they're going to know what's going on. Ariel Helwani, I don't really think he brings in the mainstream.
No.
I don't think him being banned from UFC press events or going to their fights actually does anything for the UFC. Other than just it's bad PR.
It's very bad PR move. Yeah.
Other than that, them just going, you know what, we're washing our hands of Ariel Helwani. He doesn't really do anything, and I don't think he's going to be reinstated. And also, I don't think it's as big a deal having Ariel Helwani being embargoed by the UFC. He's still going to have his sources. He's highly respected, you know what I mean? This is Ariel Helwani, the most respected mixed martial arts journalist.
Apart from Robert Palin from Wow TV now.
Yeah, but for somebody like Robert, if he could be, someone to aspire to be, is Ariel Helwani. Let's be honest, he's the man. I don't really
shit shorts all the time anyway.
Yeah, I don't really think Ariel being embargoed by the UFC really means that much, unless the UFC get really, really petty and start telling the fighters you're gonna get in trouble if you speak to Ariel Helwani.
To counter what you were saying there, Carl, that he doesn't really bring at. Look at the interview he done with Nate Diaz last week.
Yeah,
that was fucking huge. It was one of the most.
But who's watching that? Mixed martial arts fans. I think if a journalist over at MMA Junkie done that, mixed martial arts fans are going to watch that.
Not as much.
But it still has value, though.
Mm.
Yeah, it still has value, but let's be honest.
But this is their second. This,
All I'm saying is the UFC aren't losing too much by cutting off Ariel Helwani.
No, no, I
this is
don't
their
think.
this
That's
is
all
their
I'm saying.
third example of cutting people, right? You had Burt Watson,
Mm,
who was loved and adored by the fighters. Fighters still talk about Burt Watson gone. I won't stick up that finger, Carl. Then you had Stitch Duran
Yeah,
yeah.
gone, and now you have Ariel Helwani.
yeah.
By all
And
accounts,
that was forced
by
to people have forgotten about other than actual fans of the sport. So I think
but
Ariel will be forgotten about.
But Ariel will be in the
but hold
limelight as
on,
well.
hold on. I'm still have more fingers. Joe Rogan is out of contract in August. Joe Rogan all of a sudden goes, and all of a sudden the biggest franchise with all these four people I'm talking about, because I know he's not UFC, Ariel Helwani, but he's part of the fabric. He's part of the recognition. He's when you look and you see in a fighter interview after the UFC, like I like Karen Bryant, or you like Megan Olivia. You know what I mean? They're great, but they're not Ariel Helwani. They're not as good as Ariel Helwani. It's like having Messi in your team for years and then getting rid of Messi and bringing someone else in. He's the best at what he does for me. That's my personal
Yeah,
opinion.
the big problem with it isn't that it's gonna drive away fans, because it probably won't. Most likely it won't. It's gonna
No,
it's gonna
that's all.
alienate some hardcore fans. It will. It'll alienate them in a way where they've followed Ariel through the sport, they followed MMA, and it'll kind of put a bad taste in their mouth. I think what it really does do, it's obviously it sets a bad precedent, but what it does is that it gives the impression that the journalists that are covering the UFC aren't really journalists in a way, because the information that they're providing to the public is being controlled by the
Be filtered.
organization they're reporting
Yeah,
on. So
exactly.
it kind of gives that bad kind of no, and I don't think that's entirely true. I'm pretty sure there's still a lot of things that come out that the UFC don't have control over, but it gives that impression to the fan and to everybody else that the UFC are controlling basically the news that comes out through their events, and it's
Well,
not.
there's a lot of in America there they consider that certain political parties run certain news channels,
Fox.
etc. Exactly, yeah. So Carl's favorite Fox, right? So that's what I mean. This is the perfect example. The UFC should not be able to tell a journalist what you can and not say. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure they were pissed off but like that they didn't get to break the news, right? But
Yeah,
if you look right back, like when you look at the 200 press conference, everybody was asking all the laddie da questions, and Ariel Helwani stood up and went. Sure, what
yeah,
you need Connor here for? This is getting more hype. So he's not
yeah,
afraid to
exactly.
ask the hard questions, and that's what it's going to miss from the fans' perspective. Carl,
Yeah,
you're right. The
yeah,
UFC aren't going to suffer in the long run, not one bit at all.
yeah.
But the hard questions aren't going to get asked. And like if you look at other journalists now, they're seeing that other journalists should be backing Ariel Helwani here, but by the looks of it, they're not. Do you know what I mean?
Really,
Like, yeah, but like it's not that they're not, but it's just
I've
it's
seen a
shit.
lot.
Shit that
Jerry,
I'm saying.
your man from MMA junkie, fucking white dude with the Jerry curl. I don't know his name.
Yeah, Jeremy
Uh,
Butner.
yeah,
Ben Folks done up a nice piece.
yeah,
Really.
that Jeremy Butler guy needs a fucking haircut first of
Oh,
all.
that guy, yeah, Michael,
But
Mike,
Oh,
whatever
I
his
know
name
who you're
is.
talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Jerry
yeah.
Core White dude, whatever his name is, I couldn't give a shit. But yeah, I think he asked the question at the
He
post
did,
fight
yeah,
press conference,
yeah.
and he
Yeah,
said,
sure, there's just above, yeah.
certain mixed martial arts journalists or whatever were escorted from the building. Can you talk more about that? And Dave Shorley, basically gave a political answer like, "Oh, we don't want to speak for them,
Mm.
pretty much this, that, and the other, whatever, because it's just happened so fresh." That pissed me off because I'm going, hang on, this is a post-fight press conference. This is where news is supposed to be said. You should have pushed more than asked the hard question. Um,
Ariel
that's
Helwani
it.
would have done that.
Yeah, and Ariel would have done that. Now, as from our point of view, being fans of Ariel Helwani and the questions being asked, that's what we're going to miss. There are some very good journalists out there that work in the mixed martial arts community, but they're not Ariel Helwani. There's a reason why he's the best.
Yeah, and I
There's a
think as
reason.
well, like with Ariel, one of the better things that he does is his fight night coverage, where a lot of other journalists, like the likes of Ben Folks, who I read a lot, he's a very, very good journalist, but he doesn't attend events, he doesn't do that. So if he gets banned from an event, it doesn't really affect him or his readers. But with Ariel, what he does is going to the events is a big part of what he does best. You know what I mean? So it's
He
unfortunate.
used to, like, if you go back years in the UFC, he used to be standing outside in the freezing
Yeah.
cold hoping to get an interview with a fighter. Like, he's been there, like, when it wasn't cool. Like, there's a lot of journalists there that, you know, are in it now because it's the cool thing to do. You know what I mean? But it's very different. You know, I don't know. I just feel for Ariel because, you know, don't get me wrong, they're not taking his livelihood away, but in a way they're cutting his right arm off. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what he does. This is what he feeds his children with, his work. Do you know what I mean? He supports his family.
Yeah, I still think he's gonna be back. I think they'll bring him back. Like
I hope so.
They've had problems with Ariel before. Not they've had problems, but Dana has. Like, Dana stopped doing interviews with Ariel, and then eventually he started doing interviews with him again. I think he'll be back. I really do. I think
John
as well.
John Kavanagh put up a tweet as well today saying he hope he's back soon and all because he's one of the best journalists.
Yeah, and the likes of Connor and all will want Ariel to come back because they're, you know, they've built up good relationships with him, you know.
And I think that's the one saving grace for Ariel Helwani is that he's still gonna get the scoops of the century because he has those relationships.
If Anton as well though, this could make him more. I don't give a fuck, sure I'm bad. What else can he do to me?
All he can say now is, you know what? Fuck them. Now I can say what I actually think because I don't have to worry about being banned from shows. Fuck Dana White and his baldy head. Fuck him right on the baldy head. I'll jizz on you, you pox. You know, if Ariel Helwani wanted to say that, I support his right to say I want to jizz on a bald man's head.
Yeah, so I think that's a good way to end that segment.
Yeah, definitely. You may notice we're all sitting, Rob with his lovely velvet curtains, Carl with his painting behind me, and me with just the white palm walls. Yeah. We're out of studio, so we're moving home as we touched on last week. So we're hoping maybe next week we might have to do another one of these next week. But it looked for during the week that it was going to be a slow week in mixed martial arts, and then UFC 199 happened, and it was. It's hopefully it set the precedent for 200, 201, and 202.
Yeah, can't wait. Some good events coming up. There's a lot of fight nights coming in between them, and some good fights there. So, next Sunday, we'll break down the card from the next week. I can't think off the top of my head what it is, but it's a good card anyway.
I think it's Rory McDonald versus
Rory. Yeah, that's the one. Thompson. So we'll get that. But yeah, we're moving home, and we hope that we'll have an in-studio show. Maybe next week, but most likely not. Probably the week after, and it'll be some good stuff. We have some good plans for it.
Yeah, we actually have some big plans for the new studio. It should be. I'm excited about it. It should be a very, very good setup. Yeah. If we can get it to work, which I'm, working with these lads, I definitely think it can be done. It could be fun. It's gonna bring the podcast in. It'll be the same content, a few laughs and a joke, but be done to a better level. Yeah. I'm excited for it. Can't wait.
So as we always wrap it up with Dublin, you've been beautiful, you've been wonderful. But before we do that, we want to again thank MMA Mix for all your needs. Hit MMA Mix, up MMAMix.com for all your UFC, Bama, Bellator. Everything you want, mixed martial arts. They're obviously good because they're with obviously Fight Talk. You can find us on Twitter at @talk_fight. We're on obviously Fight Talk on Facebook, obviously Fight Talk on Instagram.
Right here.
Check us out
on YouTube.
On YouTube, obviously Fight Talk. Hit us up. Loads of old footage there as well. We're going to be bringing you more as well in that sense. So thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure. Being a late one, being out of the studio, but it's been fun, boys. Nice chat.
Yeah.
Thanks, man.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Like and subscribe.
Good night. And